Please be seated. Shana Tova and good Yontif.
Yontif.
And Chatima Tova. May you be sealed for the good in the book of life. Much of our work on these days is about our own turning, our own process of teshuvah, the work of repentance. We say, I'm sorry to those we've hurt. We resolve ourselves to do better. We hold ourselves accountable. But there is, of course, the flip side of the process of making teshuvah, and that's the work of slicha, the work of forgiveness, accepting the apology of another with grace, making room in our hearts for those who have wronged us, acknowledged it, and changed. It turns out that this is actually quite good for our mental health. Recent research presented at a conference on forgiveness at Harvard University demonstrates that letting go of the hurt, offering forgiveness, setting that grudge down can reduce anxiety and depression in the person who lets it go. And our tradition understands this. And while it doesn't require us to forgive others, it certainly encourages us to do so. And this is quite wise. It has to come from you. It can't be forced upon you. If you want to hold on to the hurt, if you want to wallow in its bile as it festers, bevakasha, as you wish. But it's better to set it down, let it go, and move on. And the traditional confessional that's said before one dies includes words that reminds us of this lesson. Traditionally, one says, "From all those I may have hurt, I ask forgiveness. Upon all those who hurt me, I bestow forgiveness." So now is the time for saying sorry, and it's also the time for accepting apologies graciously and with an open heart. May we have the wisdom, the courage, the empathy, and the strength to do both of these things well. Repent and forgive. Gamar Chatima Tova, may each of you be sealed in the good, for the good in the book of life. I'll invite you to turn to page 164. This is one of the only times in our tradition when we wear a talit in the evening, and there's a description in our machzor of why we do that. But if you are choosing to wear a talit tonight, you can join me in saying the blessing, Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehitatef b'tzitzit. It's now an honor and a pleasure to invite Gail and Lee Rogers to come forward and light our Shabbat candles. Please rise and turn to page 166.
Tonight, we kindle the lights of Yom Kippur. They offer us illumination, not to see the world, but to see within ourselves. May their spark ignite a journey of sincere introspection.
May their flicker remind us of the urgency of our repentance.
May their light illumine the dark recesses of our souls.
May their radiance expose the emptiness of our earthly pursuits.
May their warmth melt our icy barricades of arrogance and conceit.
May their flame sear away the pretense of our worldly achievements.
May the radiance reflect the divine that resides within us.
May their glow remind us now and forever of the divine that resides within us all.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech olam asher kirishanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehadlik ner sheyom tov.
All be seated. And if you see somebody, if there's a spot next to you and you see someone coming in, please welcome them, make a little room for them so that they can join us. It's an honor to invite the president of our congregation, Jeremy Rosen, to come up onto our bima and share some words of greeting.
Good evening. It's an honor to be here to address the congregation for the first time as your president, but I will have words for Yoshi. So unfair to come right after those children and the beautiful presentation they made. And while I will read my prepared remarks, I think what you just witnessed from the beautiful voices and the poise of those children is the perfect evidence of what Stephen Weiss Temple and Schools stands for and the future and what is so wonderful about what we do here, more than what anything I can say or any temple president could say. But that won't stop me from saying it anyway. But I think we're all very blessed to have such wonderful children here through our schools. And throughout the high holidays, we've also been very blessed to hear from other members of our community who have been sharing with us their wise stories, where we've heard through in good times and in bad how the temple and our community have played such an important and meaningful role in their lives. And what's really remarkable is that they are far from alone. The beauty of our congregation is that there are many more people just like them. For all of you who have found such a special connection with our temple, I thank you for your support and for your many contributions over the years. But for a moment tonight, though, I would like to speak to those of you who are still seeking to find your special place in our community. Perhaps you only come to our beautiful mountaintop only once or twice a year for Rosh Hashanah, Kol Nidrei, or Yitzkor services. Maybe you are here for a general sense of obligation, or perhaps a spouse or parent made you come. Whatever the reason you came, you are always welcome here, and we are grateful for your attendance tonight. And in fact, I will tell you, my wise story starts just like yours. When my wife Jody and I joined the temple in 2006, I had reservations based upon some prior bad experiences with other temples. But Jody told me to keep an open mind. And I will say it took a while. But the music, the warmth, and the thought-provoking sermons at the high holidays convinced me that Stephen Wise wasn't like those other temples. The sermons actually intersected with my own appellate pro bono work, and I soon found myself volunteering on the temple's social justice committee. The Irish painter Francis Bacon once said that I rely on chance and accident making to help me paint. And so it was with my introduction to the temple board. I met and befriended the then temple president when he rear-ended me at a non-temple event. Through that friendship, I became a founding board member for his wife's wonderful nonprofit, Wise Readers to Leaders, one of the best ideas ever birthed at the temple in terms of making positive change in the world. Stephen Wise then needed appellate advice, and soon after I was nominated to the temple board, where I started to advise the temple on various legal issues. Along the way, I forged a deep connection with the leadership and clergy, and have been privileged to do my small part to support the mission of the temple. Now, I'm not suggesting that all of you would want to become temple president, although I am certainly finding it very meaningful and fulfilling. And I promise to do my best to drive safely around all of you, because after all, I think traffic accidents are not the most effective board recruitment tool. But I am fairly confident that if you look through the program that you received on your chairs tonight, you will find an educational or travel opportunity, a social or musical event, a social justice cause, or a service that might interest you. There really is something for everyone here at Stephen Wise. The program also contains a card where you can check the box for activities that appeal to you. Please fill it out tonight and return those cards to any staff member or usher after services, or mail the card into the temple, and someone will be in touch with you to help you on your journey here at the temple. On Yom Kippur, 58 years ago, The great Sandy Koufax famously would not pitch in Game 1 of the World Series. Don Drysdale took the mound instead, and he had a rare, dreadful game. When Walter Alston came to remove him, Drysdale said, "I bet you wish I was Jewish today, too." In today's challenging world, with anti-Semitism all too common, we as Jews need to continue to stand tall and take pride in being Jewish. Only through the continued success of Jewish institutions like our own can we ensure that our people will continue to survive. But as you all know, thriving institutions come at a cost. We thank you for the dues and tuition that many of you are already generously paying, but that does not cover all the work that Wise Temple and schools do to make meaning and change the world. Each year we depend on additional contributions to fund our robust programming and other activities. The same card in your program that discusses activities also provides a way to make a donation. Our staff and ushers would also be happy to assist you after services, and you can, of course, donate online too. I would ask everyone here tonight and all of you online to join Jody and me and agree to contribute. Any amount would help and would be most greatly appreciated. I'll close tonight with a story of our shared Jewish and American history. In 1790, President George Washington corresponded with the president of a Rhode Island synagogue. This correspondence is very famous, mostly for the Washington side of the correspondence, where he promises Jews that they will be welcome in the United States and protected under our new Constitution. But tonight, of course, I'll instead quote from the synagogue president's letter, who wished that Washington would be admitted into the heavenly paradise to partake of the water of life and the tree of immortality. That is my wish for all of you too. May you and your families have a happy and healthy new year, and may all of you be inscribed into the book of life. It is my great honor and privilege to serve as your temple president, and please feel free to reach out at any time. Shana Tova.
As we communally prepare to enter that, I didn't quite get the poetry, but our heavenly space, and as we prepare for the gates to open, I'll just take a moment to gently invite you to turn off your cell phones, really just be one with the moment and with our community. We continue on page 167. Once more, Atonement Day has come, all pretense gone. Naked heart revealed to the hiding self. We stand on holy ground between the day that was and the one that must be. Join me in saying, we tremble. At what did we aim? How did we stumble? What did we take? What did we give? To what were we blind? Last year's confession came easily to the lips. Will this year's come from deeper than the skin? Say then, why are our paths strewn with promises like fallen leaves? Say then, when shall our lust be for wisdom? Say now, love and truth shall meet, justice and peace shall embrace. O hope of Israel, in our weakness give us strength. In our blindness be our guide. When we falter, hold our hand. Make consistent our impulse for good. Let us know the joy of walking in your ways. Its melody stirs us, a visceral return to the places and people we have been before. Its rhythm shakes us, moving from a whisper to a cry, fearful and joyous. Its words startle us, a confession of flaws, an admission of failure, a statement of ultimate humility. Before we hear the words of Kol Nidrei, we first must convene the heavenly tribunal. 3 times we chant the words of Bishiva Shel Mala, echoing the 3 recitations of Kol Nidrei heard throughout this night. Opening the ark and opening ourselves, we are symbolically opening the Sha'arei Shamayim, the gates of heaven, standing before God and our community, as the psalmist writes, coming to rejoice with trembling. Over the course of our service tonight, we will hear the sounds of Kol Nidrei 3 times, bringing us over the threshold from the day into this Shabbaton, this Yom Kippur. Tonight, we enter Kol Nidrei joyful but trembling. We stand together this night ready to face our humanity in hope and in humility. To bring us into this moment, we'd like to invite Carol and Gary Lazar, who are going to come forward to open the Ark. And we'll invite Maria and Vic Svilik, Nancy and Alan Sattenberg, Julie and Steve Bram, Sam Elias and Dave Clark with Alex Elias, and Roslyn and Daniel Jolson on behalf of Yasmina Jolson to come forward as well. They will be holding our Sifrei Torah as our prayers begins. The tradition is to rise as they make their way to the Ark and remain standing as you are able as the Ark is opened.
בישיבה של מעלה ובישיבה של מטה, על דעת המקום ועל דעת הקהל, אנו מתירים להתפלל עם העבריינים. בישיבה של מעלה ובישיבה של מטה, על דעת המקום ועל דעת הקהל, אנו מתירים להתפלל עם העבריינים. בישיבה של מעלה ובישיבה של מטה, על דעת המקום ועל דעת הקהל, אנו מתירים להתפלל עם העבריינים. sarna al nafshatana. Yom Kippurim al Yom Kippurim Abaleinu letova kulhon ichrat navehon kulhon yehon shara shvikin shvikin betelinum vutalin lashehirin velo kayamin Nidrona la Nidrei Vesarana laesare Ushpuatana lashevot.
We invite you to remain standing as you are able as we continue with our call to worship. Baruch Hu is on page 170.
Page 172. God, your word brings on the evening and twilight. The heavens proclaim your glory. And we, your creatures on earth, behold and wonder your mind's miracles. Help us to recognize your guiding power in distant galaxies and in our own souls. Teach us your law of righteousness. Your spirit may govern. Parent of peace, bless our worship. May our meditations find favor in your sight. So that, like the changing seasons, the days and nights, our lives too will proclaim your glory.
Thank you. Baruch atah Adonai.
Baruch hu Baruch Shemo.
Oy vamo
Please be seated. If the Shema has been called the watchword of our faith, that is the declaration of Judaism's centuries-long vision of God's essential unity, the V'ahavta, the next prayer, is the cornerstone. Its imperative, Vishinantam levanecha, teach our children, has truly inspired the Jews to become a people of the book over all these centuries. As a wandering people, the one possession that could never be pillaged was our wisdom. And so our very existence has been based not on ornate palaces or conquest of land and expanding territory, but on the passage of knowledge from one generation to the next. Each generation receives a tradition from its predecessors, embraces it, preserves it, cherishes it, and then lovingly passes it on to the next. And so, ever so subtly, one generation adds its layer of interpretation as the knowledge is refracted through the lens of their own contemporary challenges. With an eye to the past and dreams of the future, Jewish identity is placed in our hands, a gift from the generations that preceded us, a legacy that we continue to create together. The V'ahavta is on page 175.
Shall love Adonai with all your soul and all your might, and teach these words through day and night to all your children, for it's their right, and wear them proudly as a sign upon your and as a crown above your eyes, and you shall write them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates throughout all time, and you shall love Adonai with all your soul. Your mind. Teach these words day and night to all your children, for it's their right, and wear them proudly as a sign upon your hand and as a crown above your eyes. You shall on the doorposts of your house and on your gates throughout all time.
Over the course of these High Holy Days, we've invited members of our congregation to come and share their wise stories. It's a reminder of how important community is to us and how grateful we are to be able to gather once again in numbers. It's an honor to invite Rabin Pornazarian, who is a member of the congregation, also a member of our board of directors and our executive committee. Rabin, thank you so much for sharing your story. And I first came to know Rabin when we moved here from Israel. Your oldest and my youngest were in class together, and that began a friendship that has now blossomed over 11 years. Thank you so much, Rabin.
Good evening. My name is Rabin Pornazarian. It's incredible to look at our congregation and recognize so many faces that have been part of my family's journey since we became members in 2008. As we gather on this Yom Kippur, I'm filled with gratitude for the opportunity to share reflections of being a part of the fabric of our vibrant community. I was born in Iran and moved to Encino when I was 8 years old. I became a bar mitzvah at Erev Temple and attended Hebrew High School. I attended USC, where I was Hillel president, and Pepperdine Law School, where I was president of the Jewish Law Students Association. I spent a year abroad in Jerusalem during the Gulf War, and much to my parents' dismay, even spent a few nights in various bomb shelters. Israel and Judaism remain focal points of my life. It is a value I learned from my parents and share with my wife, Laura, and our 3 children, Rachel, Eli, and Jonah. Laura and I became members because we loved the strong sense of community and Zionism that this synagogue believed in. Stephen Wise has been the cornerstone of many of my family's important milestones. Of course, all 3 of our children attended the day school and became B'nai Vizpah here in this sanctuary. But even more importantly, they also celebrated their bar and bat mitzvahs in Jerusalem at the Kotel with Wise clergy. It was one of the most spiritual experiences of my life. Stephen Wise Temple has also played an important role and unique role in my son Jonah's life. When Jonah was diagnosed as a baby with glycogen storage disease, a rare metabolic condition that affects 1 in a million children, Laura and I made it our life's goal to help fund better treatments and ultimately try to find a cure. When Jonah's best friend, Dylan Siegel, wrote an amazing book called Chocolate Bar, Stephen Wise stepped up to help. We raised our first $6,000 here on Mitzvah Day, and we raised the last $10,000 of Dylan's remarkable goal of $1 million here at Stephen Wise Temple as well. Rabbi Yoshi and the rest of our outstanding clergy stepped up and helped us reach our goal. We will forever be grateful for the opportunities that this synagogue has given to our family. Raising our children within the embrace of this temple has been a privilege. It has provided my children with a community where they can learn, grow, and connect with their faith and heritage. It's become a home where we have forged bonds that will last a lifetime while supporting each other in times of joy and sorrow. My role as a member of the board of directors of our temple has been both an honor and a privilege. Together, we have done our best to ensure Stephen Wise Temple remains a welcoming haven for those who seek a spiritual home. The collective efforts and determination of the board has strengthened our community, allowing us to weather storms and celebrate successes as one. In closing, I want to wish everyone a year filled with health, peace of mind, happiness, and as Rabbi Woznicka taught me, goodness. Let us continue to raise our children in the embrace of Judaism, feeding their souls with the wisdom of our faith. Gamar Chatima Tova. May we all be sealed for a good year. Thank you.
We're going to continue with our Micha Mocha prayer, our prayer of freedom. Thank you, Rabin, for sharing a little bit of your story. And we'll have all of the stories that were shared this year up on our website. So even if you didn't get to hear the first one or the next two that are coming, you'll get to see them later on. Micha Mocha, our prayer for freedom, page 178.
בוקע ים לפני משה ומרים זה לי אנו ויאמרו אדוני את יעקב, וגאלו מיד הזק ממנו, ברוך אתה אדוני. ברוך שמו, כל ישראל.
Page 179, we'll continue with our Hashkivenu prayer. And we're so blessed to be joined by so many wonderful members of our community. Our soloist, Joe Hack, happens to be my nephew, and also our incredible junior cantors. When we get to hear your voices, you, as Jeremy Rosen told us earlier, it really fills us with a sense of excitement and joy. And we have other soloists who are going to be joining us as well. So thank you to everybody who is raising their voice and helping us to celebrate these days together. Our Hashkivenu prayer is found on page 179. We ask God to spread over us a Sukkat Shalom over us and all Israel and all humanity, a Sukkah of peace and wholeness, that sense of safety and sanctuary that we find when we gather together at moments like this.
Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu Leshalom, Leshalom. Lehamidenu Shamreinu Lechayim.
So nice, Cantor, so nice. We continue on page 181. On Yom Kippur, we speak our sins again and again. We miss the mark. In words we speak that hurt, in words we speak that harm, together. On Yom Kippur, we speak aloud, together and alone, to name the misdeeds one by one. On Yom Kippur, we speak aloud. We stand and ask forgiveness from God, from our families, from our friends, from ourselves. Give us this moment to silence the chatter, to silence the words we need to speak. Give us this moment to give voice to our souls, to quiet. Prepare us to stand before you. Prepare us to open our mouths, that we may speak our failures and our hopes, that we may speak your praise. We continue with the Kol Nidrei, the second and third recitations. I'd like to invite our members of the congregation who will bless us by holding the Torah scrolls, Golar and Sorush Ramin, Julia Petachova and David Schiff, Dina and Raymond Levy, Rick Kirkbride, and Allison and Andrew Sipes. And Donnie, please come forward, and Hilda and Dan Berger, if you'd come forward to open the ark. And while you're walking, a little context. So as I said, we recite it 3 times traditionally. This is going to be 2 and 3. The Kol Nidrei isn't a prayer, actually. It's an oath of sorts. We recite it 3 times to convey its ethical gravity. It's an acknowledgement, as the reading just said, of our failures in the past, the promises that we failed to keep, and of our renewed determination to live up to our own expectations for ourselves in the future. We make promises, we establish commitments, we give our word. Kol Nidrei compels us both to confront our shortcomings and believe that we can do better. Our word can become our bond. Our commitments to others unbreakable. The capacity to succeed rests in our hands. This year, may our deeds reflect our dreams. As you listen to the first recitation, or I should say the second repetition of the Kol Nidrei, the instrumental, I invite you to close your eyes, to enjoy the moment, and perhaps reflect on the words we've shared. The third recitation will be chanted as is customary. Please rise.
Please be seated. On page 201, on Yom Kippur, the book of remembrance is sealed. It speaks for itself, for each of us has signed it with deeds. This is the sobering truth which both frightens and consoles us. Each of us is an author, writing with deeds in life's great book, and to each you have given the power to write. No song is so trivial, no story is so commonplace. No kindness is ever done in vain. Each mitzvah leaves its imprint. Help us to remember always that what we do will live forever, that the echoes of the words we speak will resound until the end of time.
קבל ברחמים ורחמים ופרצון את השיבנו אדוני אליך, השיבנו אליך ונותשובה, חדש ימינו, ימינו.
We continue with our communal confession. You can find it on pages 200, beginning on page 203. I'll invite you to please rise as you're able. Al chet shechatanu lefanecha bezadon uvishgaga, ve'al chet shechatanu lefanecha bedibur pei. For the sin we have committed against you deliberately and by mistake, and for the sin we have committed by the words we have spoken.
Al chet shechatanu lefanecha beimutz halev, al chet shechatanu lefanecha v'tiftush peh.
For the sin we have committed against you by hardening our hearts, and for the sin we have committed through careless speech.
Al chet shechatanu lefanecha b'chachash uv'chazav ve'al chet shechatanu lefanecha birchilut.
For the sin we have committed against you through lies and deceit, and for the sin we have committed through slander. Al chet shechatanu lefanecha biflilut, ve'al chet shechatanu lefanecha bezilzul horim umorim.
For the sin we have committed against you by judging others unfairly, and for the sin we have committed by disrespecting parents and teachers.
Al chet shechatanu lefanecha bevidui peh, ve'al chet shechatanu lefanecha b'hona'at re'ah.
For the sin we have committed against you through insincere apologies, and for the sin we have committed by mistreating our neighbor.
Al chet shechatanu lefanecha b'chozek yad, ve'al chet shechatanu lefanecha b'masa uvmatan.
For the sin we have committed against you through violence and abuse, and for the sin we have committed through dishonesty in business. For all these things, God of forgiveness, forgive us, pardon us, grant us atonement. chet shechatanu lefanecha begalui uvasater, ve'al chet shechatanu lefanecha befrikat ol.
For the sin we have committed against you
openly and secretly, and for the sin we have committed by lack of self-control.
Al chet shechatanu lefanecha begilui arayot, ve'al chet shechatanu lefanecha b'machal v'mishteh.
For the sin we have committed against you through sexual immorality, and for the sin we have committed through gluttony.
Al chet shechatanu lefanecha b'yetzer hara, ve'al chet shechatanu lefanecha b'nesach uv'marbit.
For the sin we have committed against you by giving in to our hostile impulses, and for the
sin we have committed by greed and exploitation.
Al chet shechatanu lefanecha belatzon, ve'al chet shechatanu lefanecha benitiyat garon.
For the sin we have committed against you through cynicism and scorn, and for the sin we have committed by arrogant behavior.
Al chet shechatanu lefanecha b'sinat chinam, ve'al chet shechatanu lefanecha b'tum'at svatayim.
For the sin we have committed against you through baseless hatred, and for the sin we have committed by offensive speech.
Al chet shechatanu lefanecha bilshon hara, ve'al chet shechatanu lefanecha b'tzarut ayin.
For the sin we have committed against you by evil speech, and for the sin we have committed by selfish and petty behavior. For all these things, God of forgiveness, forgive us, pardon us, grant us atonement.
Our vidui continues on page 207.
Ay, 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 Dibarnu dofi. Dibarnu dofi. Ay, 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 Zanu, Hamasnu, Tafalnu Sheker,
Tafalnu sheker.
ay, 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 Ya'atznu Ra,
Ya'atzura.
Hizavnu,
Tizavnu.
Latznu,
Latznu.
Maranu,
Maranu.
Nihatznu,
Niatznu.
Sararnu,
Sararnu.
Avinu,
Avinu.
Hashanu,
Pashanu.
Sararnu,
Sararnu.
Kishinu Oref,
Kishinu oref.
ay, 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 Rashanu,
Rashanu.
Shichatnu,
Shichanu.
Tiavnu,
Tiavnu.
Ta'inu,
Ta'inu.
Titanu,
Titanu.
ay, 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 ay,
We continue with Avinu Malkeinu. You can find that on page 208. Please remain standing. Avinu Malkeinu Shema Kolenu. Together, Avinu
Avinu
Malkeinu.
Malkeinu, hear our voices.
Avinu Malkeinu Chatanu Lefanecha.
Avinu Malkeinu, we have sinned before you.
Avinu Malkeinu, chamol aleinu ve'al olalenu v'tapenu.
Avinu Malkeinu, have mercy upon us and upon our children. Avinu Malkeinu, kale dever v'cherev v'ra'av me'aleinu.
Avinu Malkeinu, help us diminish pestilence, war, and famine.
Avinu Malkeinu Karle Kol Tsar Umastin Merlenu.
Avinu Malkeinu, inspire us to banish hate and oppression from the earth.
Avinu Malkeinu, kotvenu b'sefer chayim tovim.
Avinu Malkeinu, enter us in the book of life. Avinu Malkeinu, chadesh aleinu shana tova.
Avinu Malkeinu, renew our faith in the future, that we may make the coming year a year of goodness.
Avinu Malkeinu, Shema Koleinu. Avinu Malkeinu, Atanu Lefanecha. Avinu Malkeinu, Amal Aleinu. Ve'al Aleinu, V'tapeinu.
Avinu Malkeinu
My first trip to Israel was in the summer of 1978, just 5 years after the Yom Kippur War, whose 50th anniversary we commemorate today. We traveled as a family to celebrate the B'nai Mitzvah of my older sister Rosie, who's here with me tonight, and my brother Adam. I was 8 years old, and I remember it vividly. And even if I didn't, I have an amazing photo album from that summer that includes one of my favorite pictures from my childhood. I know you can't all see it, but just feast your eyes on this. That's me and my mom on the beach of Tel Aviv, and I'm rocking a chai that is about the size of my kneecap, I guess. At my mom's insistence, I also kept a travel diary. And, Cantor, can you hand me my briefcase right there? Thank you. Because I brought my travel diary with me. This is it. The first entry and every subsequent entry is entitled, What I Did. Entry number 1. On Sunday, a bus came and took us to the Hotel Sheraton. Then we went walking around to different places, such as an ice cream place and a tater tot joint. I'm not making this up. The second entry, what I did. I woke up Monday morning in Tel Aviv and put on a swimming suit and went in the Mediterranean Sea and surfed the waves and swam. Then came back to the hotel. When we finished breakfast, we went to the bus. First, the bus went to a famous person's house by the name of Ben Gurion. And we saw the Beit HaTefutzot Museum. Then we went to Jerusalem and went out to dinner at the Sea Dolphin. Then we went to the wall, and I put a note in, and we came back to our hotel room and went to sleep. It continues like this for several pages. We visited Ammunition Hill and the Israel Museum. I guess my parents thought I was mature for my age because they decided it was appropriate to bring me along to Yad Vashem, a very explicit museum about the Holocaust, not designed for 8-year-olds. A few days later, they demonstrated the same confidence. On Friday, we went to the people who died in the wars and saw their graves. Then we went to the Orthodox Jew part of town and went home, got dressed, and went to Friday night services in the Old City. 3 takeaways from my travel diary. 1, my personal relationship with the State of Israel goes way, way back. 2, in those diary entries are actually many of the same issues that we continue to think about today, that continue to animate and inform and complicate life in Israel. Memories of the Holocaust, the relationship between Israel and the diaspora, cemeteries filled with young people who made the ultimate sacrifice for the nation, and religious segregation, neighborhoods and sometimes whole cities and settlements set aside for ultra-Orthodox Jews. And 3, my writing, if not my penmanship, has definitely improved. Now, I moved to Israel for rabbinical school in 1992 and lived there for 2 years. And that's where I met Jacqueline on my first Simchat Torah in the Holy Land. Later, I spent 2 summers leading high school trips to Israel for NIFTY, the Reform Movement's youth organization. And after I became a rabbi in 1998, I returned to Israel often for visits and congregational missions, and then more intensely over 4 consecutive summers as part of a fellowship through the Hartman Institute in Jerusalem. In the middle of that program, Jacqueline and I and the girls decided to move to Israel full-time, making Aliyah and becoming citizens. It was an incredible adventure and experience, filled with many, many highlights and some challenging lowlights as well. One highlight was running the Year in Israel program at HUC, where Cantor Emma and her husband Adam were my students. As a family, we worked hard on our Hebrew. We navigated challenges, both predictable and unforeseen, finding doctors, getting our Israeli driver's licenses. We were actually surprised to know that there was such a thing as an Israeli driver's license if you've seen them drive. We ended up signing long forms, all in Hebrew, to set up our retirement accounts, learned how to pay our taxes, lots and lots of taxes. We got involved in our kids' schools, joined a synagogue, signed our children up for after-school activities like dance and capoeira, mainly for family reasons having to do with my father-in-law's health. We decided to move back to America 3 years later, relocating to Los Angeles to join the Stephen Wise Temple family, first as your head of schools and then as your senior rabbi. And apart from the pandemic, I've been back to Israel every year at least once since we returned. I've led multiple trips to Israel for the temple, with another one coming up next December 2024 in honor of our congregation's 60th birthday, and after Yom Kippur, you can sign up. Israel has been my full-time home for 5 years of my adult life, and now it's a second home, a place I return to again and again to be with dear friends and family, a place I go to study and to teach. And I know many of you could share similar stories. Some of you have lived in Israel for extended periods of time. Some of you grew up there. Others might have visited only once, or maybe you're feeling that pull, that sense of connection, and you're planning your first trip now. But let's be honest. Today is a day for honesty, after all. There are many in our extended Jewish community who feel, especially at this moment, detached from Israel, apathetic even about the very Jewish state that their ancestors could only dream of. And surveys indicate that their numbers are growing. More and more American Jews are saying that they're done with Israel, tired of talking about it, tired of arguing about it, tired of hearing about attempts or threats by one government or another, including this one, to marginalize Reform and conservative Jews, us. Tired of hearing about government ministers, including some current ones, making racist or homophobic comments. Tired of efforts of the ultra-Orthodox community to segregate women in public settings or deny full equality to members of the LGBTQ+ community. And tired of reading about the seemingly unending and unresolvable Israel-Palestine conflict. And if we're being honest, we are complicit in this as a community. We have allowed Israel to become a wedge issue, a third rail that many are reluctant to touch, including quite a few rabbis I know. No matter what you say or how carefully you say it, someone will get upset. You'll be labeled too liberal or too conservative, too critical or not critical enough, an ultra-woke universalist or a right-wing nationalist, focused solely on the fate of Israeli Jews or obsessed with social justice for all. If you raise a concern or offer a loving critique, someone will accuse you of being anti-Israel. Everyone to your left is soft or naive, and everyone to your right is a zealot, blinded to the suffering of the Palestinian people. On Yom Kippur, this Yom Hadin, this day of judgment and introspection, let's acknowledge our own complicity in this crisis. Al Chet Shechatanu, for the things we were afraid to say and for the things we said too harshly that might have caused others to feel more distance from Israel. Al Chet Shechatanu, for being too quick to judge and too impatient to listen. Al Chet Shechatanu, for maligning our fellow Jews, for failing some purity test of our own creation. Al Chet Shechatanu, for not figuring out how to talk about Israel openly, honestly, and respectfully. and our own American domestic politics makes it worse. Israel as an issue is now routinely weaponized by both American political parties to rally votes from one segment or another of the electorate. Some deploy Israel to curry favor with the more traditional pro-Israel Jewish or evangelical communities. Others to mobilize the progressive, less Israel-supportive, or even anti-Israel crowd. As much as we might be tempted to just ignore it, though, we really can't. Because as one of my dearest Israeli friends named Guy told me recently, Israel is your country too, whether you like it or not. Israel is our country too. We are members of Am Yisrael, and no matter where we live or what passport we carry, we are part of this story. And make no mistake, every Israeli friend I spoke to recently said they needed our help now. A widely circulated article published last month in the Times of Israel by leading Israeli journalists and thinkers Mati Friedman, Yossi Klein Halevi, and Rabbi Daniel Gordis, entitled Diaspora Jews, It's Time to Take a Stand, is an invitation, a plea to us to get more involved. These thought leaders describe what is happening today as an existential threat to Israeli democracy and to the long-term viability of the Jewish state. They characterize the current crisis as not just one more Israeli debate over policy, but a struggle over the fundamental identity of Israel as a Jewish and democratic state. Now, Friedman, Klein Halevi, and Gordis acknowledge, as do I, that there are many other threats that Israel faces, some existential in nature. It's a tough neighborhood, so you can just take your pick. Iran, Syria, Hamas in Gaza, Hezbollah in Lebanon. And of course, there are those around the world who seek to delegitimize Israel on college campuses, on social media, in houses of parliament, in our Congress, and at the United Nations. And they would also acknowledge, as do I, that it's not all doom and gloom. There is much to celebrate, including the recent Abraham Accords, and even the possibility of normalization of relations between Israel and Saudi Arabia, which was once thought of as a mere fantasy. But their focus, and mine tonight, is the existential crisis that they argue is a result of actions of Israel's current government, which include the recent bill limiting the power of the judiciary to review and invalidate laws passed by the Knesset that are deemed to be unreasonable. And since Israel doesn't have a formal constitution, this would allow the government to pass laws that conflict with core values expressed in Israel's Declaration of Independence, values that are sacrosanct in most democracies. A proposed law that will enable the government to ignore the legal advice of Israel's Attorney General. The proposal that judicial nominations be entirely controlled by the government as opposed to by an independent selection committee as it is now. And that would allow the government to appoint whomever it wishes without oversight or any attempt at bipartisanship. Statements made by some members of this government, including ministers in this government, expressing their intentions to delegitimize reform and conservative Judaism, marginalize women and the LGBTQ plus community, along with Arab citizens of Israel. The desire to create a permanent military exemption for the ultra-Orthodox community, and a desire to unilaterally annex the West Bank, effectively ending the possibility of a two-state solution. And this unprecedented crisis has led many Israelis to call for American Jews to become more involved in Israel's domestic politics, which marks a significant change. The diaspora's relationship with Zionism has been complex. In the late 1800s, as the Zionist movement was taking shape, many Jews around the world were actually unsupportive, focusing instead on the work of emancipation, making a place for themselves in European or American society. It was, in fact, Rabbi Stephen Samuel Wise, the man for whom this temple was named, who helped the American Jewish community embrace Zionism, our dream of a Jewish homeland. And Rabbi Isaiah Zeldin, our founder of blessed memory, chose to honor Rabbi Wise for just this reason, as an expression of his deeply held Zionist impulses, which we continue to cherish and uphold as a community. Indifference and even opposition to Zionism transformed in time into passionate support, buying Israel bonds, planting trees, funding Israel-focused philanthropies, visiting our brothers and sisters on missions and family tours, and lobbying government officials on Israel's behalf. When the chips were down in 1948, in 67, and in 73, diaspora Jews were critical to Israel's financial, military, and diplomatic survival. And without the support of the Jewish communities around the world, but especially in America, it's likely that the state of Israel never would have survived to this day. So we are part of this story. Israel is and always has been the shared project of Am Yisrael, of the Jewish people. Long before my grandparents and parents took me on that trip to Israel, their parents and grandparents were collecting coins for the pushki, the tzedakah box, to send to the yishuv, and then later to the state of Israel. This is going to be hard for you to see, but this is a photo that was taken in February of 1936 in the elegant ballroom of the Hotel Willard in Washington, D.C., at a fundraiser celebrating the launch of the United Palestine Appeal. That's what it was called, of course, in those days during the Mandate pre-state period. And on the dais are seated some of the greatest Zionist luminaries of the day, Rabbi Abba Hillel Silver, Justice Louis Brandeis, the president of the Zionist Organization of America, Louis Lipsky, and right there in the middle, Rabbi Stephen Samuel Wise. Jews from across the country attended these fundraisers to demonstrate their support and passion for the Zionist cause. And seated at one of the tables is a couple that traveled by train all the way from Kansas to show their support. My maternal great-grandfather and grandmother, the ones I mentioned in my Rosh Hashanah sermon, Herman and Fanny Levinson. Before it was even a state, Israel needed us. And as powerful and established as it is now, it needs us still, perhaps more than ever before. Al chet shechatanu. For the sin we've committed by seeing ourselves as bystanders, witnesses to the miracle of our people's return to sovereignty, as opposed to partners and participants in it. Now, I shared with you some of the words of Israel's most respected thought leaders, simultaneously calling out the cause of the crisis, the current Israeli government, and asking us to be their partners in solving it. But tonight, I also want to share the words of several of my friends, ordinary Israelis who are in the trenches during one of the most challenging times in our national homeland's history. I've known my friend Hadar since she moved to Palo Alto in 2001 to be with her boyfriend Guy, whom I mentioned earlier, while he was working in tech after his service in the Army and his studies at the Technion. Hadar and Guy, they are family to us. And after Guy's stint in Palo Alto, they returned to Israel. And here's how Hadar describes the present moment. These are her words. Every Saturday night, we go to Kaplan. That's where the big protests in Tel Aviv are held. That's what we do. We have WhatsApp groups for everything. We have a group for what happens if a friend is arrested at a protest. Another group if someone is injured by a water cannon. Another group for if the timing or location of a protest is changed. She explained to me that these protests and gatherings are amazingly polite. Everyone is well behaved. All ages come out to participate, from grandparents to parents to teenagers and children. Hadar told me they come and protest and then they leave and it's spotless. It's a miracle. No garbage. And then for emphasis, she added, as if I had forgotten, I'm talking about Israelis. And these protesters are most definitely not all secular Tel Aviv lefties. Far from it. It's an amazingly diverse group. Orthodox, National Religious Party members, and folks like Hadar's father-in-law, Tsuri, who was born in Baghdad and immigrated in March of 1951 as part of Operation Ezra and Nehemiah, in which more than 100,000 Iraqi Jews were airlifted to Israel. Tsuri was a lifelong Likud supporter, and now he's out protesting Netanyahu and his government. But Tsuri is far from the only Likud supporter or Orthodox Jew at these gatherings. Recently, there have been protests in major West Bank communities, including Ma'ale Adumim, Efrat, and Ariel. Thousands of Israeli residents from these settlements are coming out each Motzei Shabbat, every Saturday night, to protest this government. Everyday people with busy lives and families and work and bills to pay and other things they could be doing, hundreds of thousands of them, out on the streets week after week in Tel Aviv, Jerusalem, Haifa, all over the country, and even around the world. There's a group here in Los Angeles called Unacceptable that holds rallies every Sunday outside the Israeli consulate. For 38 consecutive weeks, they've been doing it, including last night, when more than 100,000 protesters gathered in Tel Aviv. And they had a giant sign with a photo of the prime minister on it that said, Ein Mechila, no forgiveness. In fact, when I woke up this morning, there was a message on my phone from Hadar. And here's how she explains it. She said, there has always been an agreement between the people and the government. The citizens are expected to pay their taxes and serve in the army. They have to be willing to make the ultimate sacrifice. The unwritten contract was that in exchange for all that, the government would protect our democracy. And that contract, she told me, is being broken. And what troubles Hadar and many Israelis I've spoken to, along with leading commentators and political analysts like Friedman Gordis and Klein Halevi, is that the person leading the government that is attempting to make these changes to the legal system, changes which are widely considered to be damaging to Israel's democracy, has himself been charged with fraud, breach of trust, and accepting bribes in 3 separate scandals involving powerful media moguls and wealthy associates. And some of these proposed reforms are clearly in his own self-interest. My friend Leon, a college classmate who made Aliyah just after we graduated, is now a rabbi and PhD who serves as the director of Kolot, a nonprofit that brings together diverse groups of Israelis from religious to secular, Jewish and Arab, to learn and reflect on texts from our tradition that can help fashion Israel as a model society, inspired by the highest Jewish ethical principles. Leon acknowledges that notwithstanding the prime minister's legal troubles, there is a good case to be made for judicial reform. And many have argued this point, including legal experts I greatly admire. Israel's system is far from perfect and lacks a constitution or Bill of Rights that might prevent the tyranny of the majority. But this reform isn't attempting to do any of that. And it's easy to see why so many Israelis and others have concluded that Netanyahu has used the legitimate interest of improving the system for personal gain. And many fear that those Knesset members and ministers who have vowed to roll back rights for women and erode protections for the LGBTQ+ community will do just such unreasonable things as soon as the Supreme Court is removed as an obstacle. Al chet shechatanu, for the sin we've committed by not holding our leaders accountable for their actions and for allowing them to put their own interests before the common good. Leon, too, characterized this moment as a time of existential threat to the state of Israel, noting that many people are starting to vote with their feet, with consequences that are far-reaching to the state. Israel's military fitness has already been compromised by reservists who've stopped showing up for their miluim duty in protest. And going forward, because it's likely that more and more young people will refuse to enlist. Leon worries about the brain drain as well. The startup nation will have a hard time starting up if more and more talented engineers and entrepreneurs decide to leave. He fears the unraveling of Israel's social fabric and the possibility of real bloodshed, even civil war. We have ministers. He also told me that he has grave concerns about the rule of law as well. In his words, we have ministers of government who are criminals. I'm not talking about their repeated espousal of racist, sexist, or homophobic beliefs, which is bad enough. I mean actual criminals. Two of these ministers, Bezalel Smotrich and Itamar Ben-Gvir, are especially divisive and problematic. Smotrich was arrested in 2005 for participating in an attempt to blow up a major highway in Israel as a protest against the Gaza disengagement. This was during the leadership of Ariel Sharon. He is now the Minister of Finance and has been tasked with expanding settlements in the West Bank. Another minister, Itamar Ben-Gvir, didn't serve in the IDF because the army didn't want to draft him. Given his ties with the Jewish terrorist organization, Ben-Gvir was considered unfit to serve and too dangerous to be given a gun. Now his portfolio as a minister astonishingly includes oversight of the Israel police force. As Leon put it, we are fighting for the soul of Israel, fighting for what democracy itself means. Al chet shechatanu, for the sin we've committed by allowing our highest values to be betrayed, values that are core to our Jewish tradition, like not perverting justice or taking bribes, values focused on protecting the most vulnerable, the stranger, the widow, and the orphan, values like the commandment at the center of the Torah, the verse we'll read tomorrow afternoon from Leviticus 19, and you shall love your neighbor as yourself. Values that honor the dream of what Israel is supposed to be, as articulated by Theodore Herzl and later enshrined in its Declaration of Independence, which calls for a Jewish state based, quote, on freedom, justice, and peace as envisaged by the prophets of Israel, a place that ensures complete equality of social and political rights to all its inhabitants, irrespective of religion, race, or sex. What's particularly tragic about all of this is that what we're doing to ourselves now, we've done before. Recently, Yossi Klein Halevi noted in a public webinar the historical connection between this moment and another one 2,000 years ago, which he described as a meeting point between political corruption and zealotry. It was this same convergence that destroyed ancient Judean sovereignty in the year 70 of the Common Era. The sages of the Talmud labeled it sinat chinam, senseless hatred, and we're seeing it again in Israel and here in our own communities as well. And by the way, it's just what our enemies want, isn't it? With anti-Semitism on the rise on college campuses and social media, we can't afford to keep making the same mistake again and again, descending into division and rancor. Now more than ever is the time to call for and model unity and compromise, empathy and understanding. Al chet shechatanu, for the sin we've committed by repeating the mistakes of our past. Chatanu, pashanu, tainu. We have transgressed. We have fallen short. We have sinned. A central lesson of this day, though, is that it's not too late to return. Not yet, at least. And this is cause for hope, for tikva. My friend Guy told me that what gives him hope are the three superwomen of Israel, today's defenders of Israel's democracy. One is named Shikma Bressler, a professor of physics who has found her civic voice by speaking out again and again against this government, and she has become the face of the protest movement. Another is Esther Chayut, the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of Israel, for now at least, the final and only check on the power of the government. And the third is Gali Baharav Miara, the Attorney General of the State of Israel, the first woman ever to serve in that role in Israel's history. Last week, she called on the Supreme Court to strike down the controversial law that was recently passed by the Netanyahu government limiting judicial review. My friend Leon finds hope in the protests themselves, Week after week, people keep coming. And he sees the hundreds of thousands of people showing up, and he knows he's not alone. And here's how Hadar puts it. I really want to do something else on Saturday nights, but I feel like I don't have any other choice. Even if we lose, I want to know that I did everything I could that is legal and nonviolent to say that I am opposed to what is happening. If not now, she said, when? And if not me, then who? And here's what might give them all just a little more hope. If we were to get involved, the protesters need our support financially, which we can do through ARTZA, the Association of Reform Zionists. And we can support the Israel Religious Action Center and its extraordinary executive director, Orly Erez-Lichovsky, whom I recently interviewed on my podcast if you want to learn more about her work. We can reach out to our Israeli friends and ask them to share their stories, learn more about what's happening through their eyes. And we can gather together here for Shabbat services to offer prayers for Israel each week and learn from some special guests in the coming months, including Major General Nadav Padan and former chair of the Meretz Party, Yossi Beilin. And we can travel there and participate in a protest ourselves, demonstrating our belief that Israel is ours too, and that we care about it being a Jewish and democratic state. And please, let's show that Israel matters to us as a community by joining together in great numbers for our congregational mission in 2024. Look, I know that some of what I've shared with you this evening might be hard to hear. It hasn't been easy to say. But here's one last thing that gives me hope. My parents took me to Israel in 1978 and shared a dream with me that goes back thousands of years. They showed me all sorts of things on that trip, like Ben Gurion's house and the Israel Museum. And they showed me challenging things like Har Herzl, the military cemetery, and Yad Vashem. And they showed me delightful things like the beaches of Tel Aviv, lots of yummy ice cream, and an unnamed tater tot joint. And that visit, those experiences sparked a love and a commitment in me that has only deepened through the years. A love of that place and its people, what it has become, and what it might yet be. My grandparents and my parents tried successfully to implant that love in me, and I've tried to do the same for my children. The crisis that this shared project of the Jewish people finds itself in is largely self-inflicted. And that means, perhaps, that some of the solutions to the crisis are in our hands as well. In 5784, as Ohavei Tzion, a diverse group of lovers and supporters of Israel, may we have the courage, the commitment, and the koach, the energy, in partnership with all Am Yisrael, to do better as a people so that we might be worthy of that dream. Shana Tova.
Those powerful words and that powerful vision, we turn to our liturgy's vision of unity and of a world redeemed. We turn now to Aleinu. I want to invite Jacqueline Hankin and Esty Heim up to open the Ark. I will invite the community, as you are able, to rise, page 212.
Aleinu leshabeach la'adon ha'kol, la'teit hidula liotzer rishit, shelo asanu k'vo נשפכות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגור עולנו ככל המונה, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא. ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני
Please be seated. These are not the only candles we light as Yom Kippur begins. In so many of our homes, the yahrzeit candle also burns for these 25 hours, bringing with it the memories of those who have sat with us year after year and who sit with us no longer, at least physically. If you are in a period of Shiva or Shloshim, 7 or 30 days following the loss of a loved one, we invite you, if you are here and want to rise, if you're at home and want to share a name. If you are in the period of Shana, the first year, especially following the loss of a parent, you want to rise here or share a name at home. If this particular week, such a hard time, marks a yahrzeit, an anniversary of death in your family, we invite you here to rise or to share a name if you're joining us from home. And if it is your custom, or if indeed you have a yahrzeit candle burning at home, we'll invite you to rise in solidarity. Mourner's Kaddish can be found in the Ashkenazi tradition on page 214, in the Edot HaMizrach on page 216. Yitzgadal v'yitzgadash shemei rabbah, v'alma divrach hirutei v'amlich malchutei, v'chaye echon u'vyom echon, u'v'chaye d'chol beit Yisrael, v'agala u'vizman kariv v'imru amen. Yehei shmei rabbah mevorach leolam olomei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitba'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitalev v'yitalal shmei t'kudsha b'richu la'ela u'la'ela mikol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata damiran be'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya v'chaim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom bimromav, hu yaseh shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael, v'imru amen. May the one who makes peace send peace to those who mourn and comfort to those who are bereaved, as together we say, amen. Before we close, we just take a moment to offer gratitude to all who helped us open the gates this evening, to our talented musicians, our incredible choir, Yoshi's nephew, and incredible soloist, Joe Hack, our junior cantors who are making their way back to the Bima now, to my colleagues, to Cantor Emma for your beautiful voice and soul, Rabbi Stern and Rabbi Yoshi, who's made his way to Katz to speak there as well, for your wisdom, to Iris Levine, who's back there conducting all of this beautiful music, To everyone who participated in this service, thank you for all you do for our community. To our amazing crew who allows us to experience these moments on campus and at home. To our staff, please thank them who work tirelessly to make these days meaningful and comfortable for all of us. And to all of you, for being here and at home, for opening your hearts and your souls with us. Thank you. May we be remembered for safety, well-being, and favor, for love and compassion, for life and for peace on this Day of Atonement. G'mar Chatima Tova. May we be inscribed for a year of blessing.
Tov.